if you get everything on. What's up, man? You're on mute. Unmute.
There we go.
Yay, technology. Oh my God.
Right?
What you been
Yeah,
up
I'm
to?
on. Oh, a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of weirdery, you know. Okay. Here.
What was that? You fell in totally like it.
Okay. So did you hear about Meatloaf dying?
Yes.
Okay, so do you want to hear some high weirdery?
Please.
Two nights before, I was talking to a friend of mine who's like a mega fan. She was obsessed, and we were having a conversation. The next morning, I made a joke, and I was like, you know, meatloaf sounds great, man. I haven't had that dish in forever. I had a friend who was like, okay, we'll go to the store and we'll get it. We ate meatloaf that night. The next morning, I woke up, and the first fucking thing I saw was that he'd passed away. I was like, God damn. So over a 3-day period of progression.
You ate meatloaf.
I did. I made a joke.
That's some Rocky Horror shit right there. Like,
isn't that terrifying? Like, what the fuck do you do with that information? Like,
I mean, that's one of those things. It's like there's the meme of Bob Saget and Betty White saying, "Which we ordering for dinner?" And Betty White responded, "How about meatloaf?"
God damn it. There's some kind of meme wizardry that's going on that I connected somehow subconsciously, and I guess it filtered in through my
I gotta say, man, that's all synchronicity. You know, like fucking awesome.
Right?
Yeah. So how has your month been since you've done all of the things?
Interesting. Interesting. I actually I'll confess something to you. I need to be a little bit more thorough with it. I've actually pretty much think I've found a path, which is finally going to manifest, because I feel like I've been leading up to this for quite a while, and I just really haven't grasped all the pieces because it was like a tenuous like strand, you know. It was very, very, very finely woven, like spider silk. And I had, for years, I've been trying to find, and I wouldn't have thought it was all that obscure. In my mind, anyway, the way I think is that this is a type of magic that people would really get into and dig into the meat thereof. And I know that, you know, as I did research, I realized that certain cultures, like, for example, the Norse, they didn't write a lot of their rituals down. You know, a lot of it was passed word of mouth.
Right.
It was oral tradition. And I completely understand why, too. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want people knowing the ins and outs and all of that kind of stuff, you know. So if you just pass it down to Olaf, you know, who passes it down to his kin, and, you know, you've got the scythe women who are doing their thing, and that's even more of an obscure branch. But I got into reading a book of druidry, and it was talking about the minstrels and the bards and whatnot, the bardic tradition, and was kind of painting it in an interesting light, because a lot of the antinomian stuff and a lot of the like satanic Order of the Nine Angles type of shit, where they're very much into promoting the self as a god. Yeah. That was apparently a very Celtic thing, and I had no clue that was a thing at all. You know, they were citing resources and such like that for historical documents and whatnot, and talking about how the tradition of like playing music was actually secondary to the path, and that it was really more of like a complementary practice to druidry and hedge witchery that went hand in hand. So Yeah, that's kind of been my thing that I've been obsessing over for the last couple days, because it's been something that I've really like had weighing on me to study, but I've had no like in particularly, because there's no branch. And I would really like to apply some of your rituals to this and see if um they aren't complementary, because like with a lot of the spirit science stuff, when I would do work, the closest thing I got was working with Shiva, right?
Okay.
And that's when I got into a lot of the astro like gate walking stuff, but I would channel it through my body. There was a particular I don't know if I ever mentioned this to you or not. There was a particular well, if you're not familiar with the Hindu practices, I don't know how deep you go into the Eastern stuff.
The only thing that I've done is a couple of weeks back, there was a Rudraksha ceremony that Sadhguru was doing live through Zoom. It was an initiation to awaken the Rudraksha.
Oh,
And
cool.
when I was doing the chanting to awaken the bead, I saw Shiva in the energetics vision while chanting to Shiva about that. So that was as close to that energy as I've ever been.
Right on. It was very intense when I did that. I stood in the position of the god, and essentially was doing like a god form, kind of like channeling. And I put my arms in each of the 8 positions. You know how you have him with the different forms, and he's got the, his both arms in 8 different positions that eventually terminate right over his head. And that's like the arc of space and whatnot.
Right.
Which is a similar type of technology that they reference. Like Nuit would be that in the Egyptian cosmology, because she's the archer, the gateway of space that contains everything, primordial goddess.
Right.
So when I was doing that, I had like this huge, I was subfumigating the room and whatnot. I had this huge like awakening thing to where I could feel like almost every like molecule in my body vibrating at different rates and shit like that. It was very, very intense. And I was doing like sacred dance, and I started realizing that it was more than just studying sound and understanding how to use it as like scales and stuff like that from like a flat 2D reality. But I started realizing I was projecting myself in and out of different it almost felt like frame rates of life. And so I think that when you get to talking about like quantum jumping and stuff like that, like you were talking about the other day, how you mentioned on my video.
Yeah.
It was almost in a similar type of way, but the way he brought it on was very different from other ways I'd experienced it. Like there was another time I was working with an angel named Hanael, who's a Venusian spirit. And when I did that particular working, she kind of manipulated my body, and I realized that the way I was posturing was almost sigillic of something, but I couldn't, my mind wasn't open to it, I guess, because it was weird. It was like it was breaking my mind trying to perceive myself in that way. And that this being was trying to get me to see, okay, look, I'm trying to get you to do like an advanced meditation to where you can literally be conscious on this side of the veil and that side of the veil. And as you're mirroring yourself, you're drawing in bits and pieces of that and siphoning it through the music. That way you open a door and permanently etch it in that realm. And I just like, yeah, I shat bricks. It was far beyond, because I was doing LSD and whatnot. So I was really, really into it. I mean, I couldn't be brought out of meditation. I had people trying to get a hold of me, and you could have cracked me over the head, I think, with a bat, and it wouldn't have.
Jesus. Yeah. Fuck,
So,
I love that stuff.
Right. And well, that's what I was saying is with your stuff, you touch on a lot of those things, but you touch on them from an angle of like, I would really like to see if I get into doing the Bardic stuff, if I couldn't actually perceive the tones or the frequencies at which those things are vibrating, and maybe try to like encapsulate like a sonic hypersigil to link to them or whatnot. That would be interesting too, I think. How do you feel about that?
So what you're describing is pretty much on point with what I've experienced. So every layer of sound technology, what have you. It's all vibrations, right? It's all vibration stirring particles. And what I've understood to be time is a non-linear expression of it. So when you say in a moment, right, it's the spirit mind comes through the body in a non-linear way to manifest as a self within that moment. It's like you're over here while you're looking at your body doing this, while it's choosing to connect the conscious string from outside of space-time into the moment, arching it through progressive experiences that get that spell or that effect to manifest, but it's not technically connected to the rest of the waking life.
Right.
It's separate. It's a different type of overlay. And it's through that overlay of you're bringing this energy together, you're creating this thing. And from that thing, all tangible action will eventually line up so that way that thing is made manifest. But how it does so can be over a period of time. And that period of time could be days, it could be weeks, it could be a month, whatever. Lunar cycles, that shit. Because it's dealing in the non-linear. You've caused it to be outside of space-time, but there is a boundary of your body then has to connect to, well, it's got to go through this phase and this phase and this phase and this phase and this phase in order to be able to have fully what's over here. So you have to have path working that connects you back to that energy as you literally walk out the path of whatever it is, the magic that you've conjured or what have you.
Yeah. Hence the conduit of, I don't know. Tell me how you feel about this, because this is something that this is like some unconfirmed gnosis that I've kind of like waded through. And I really feel like it's on point, but at the same time, I feel like there might be other elements of it that I'm not 100%, aware of. And I'm sure there are, because you get the whole macro micro scale and things start to blend, and then you've got other ends that are tied into it and whatnot. So it almost feels like consciousness is the conduit of this plane of existence for other energies filtering in, like through, if you were to take it from a stack dimension and it was to come all the way directly down,
right, and
permeate through the a conscious field, okay, and then inform matter at whatever particular route or way that energy tends to flow, which those things are probably varying depending on what it is you're dealing with.
Yes. So there is this collective intelligence I call the hive. Okay, so it governs the behavior of life. Bees go about their bee business, ants go about their ant business, deer in the fields do their business, all that sort of thing. They have behavior protocols. They behave a certain way because they have no conscious mind. The hive is the connective mind of all forms of life. Humans are the ones that get to break away from that. They get to do their own thing. So interacting with entity, connectivity, and consciousness as a whole singular in its collective. Over the last month, my buddy has been doing these hypnosis inductions, and I've been making liberal use of his capacity as a medium and a seer to put him into induction where he goes and is not in control of his body while I'm evoking the hive through him, and I have a direct link to the collective consciousness.
Right.
And so
he's becoming your material. He's becoming your material basis, right? Exactly.
So I interact with the collective hive, and their thing is time is nonlinear, paradox exists, etc., etc., etc. Like I can send you some of the chat logs that I've got from this shit, trying to figure out what can be done in order to be able to move things forward on a much larger scale.
Have you ever come across a magician who's actually linked themselves to that and is able to go back and forth between?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, is like, that's what Dustin does. It's
Yeah.
it's
I-
just we're
I-
using it. We're using the hypnotic element in order to make it more permanent.
Yeah. I kind of feel that's what's happened to me because, like, I mean, it's fucked with my sleep cycles over the years. Like last night, for example, I was so awake and aware. I was seeing as if my eyes were open, but I know that for a fact because I blinked several times to make sure that my eyelids were. So I was like seeing despite the fact that my eyelids were shut.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Weird little shit like that, and I
Oh.
haven't been able to.
Yeah. That's that magic for you. Welcome to your new life, buddy.
Right? It's like, by the way, you could probably push your fucking consciousness out and bilocate if you really tried hard enough, you fuckwit. Build the muscle, like.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and that's the thing is like back in 2013, 2014, 15, I was working with a group of 2 other guys, and we would be consciously projecting all the fucking time. Like we'd be chatting in text back and forth because the camera technology wasn't there and we didn't do audio. So it was just text. And
Right.
so it allowed you to be in a hypnotic state where you could respond and be out of your body at the same time. So you could be consciously aware of your body and also dealing with the shit on the planes. And you could be seeing and you could be interacting and you could be dual projecting. So you've got your consciousness here and your consciousness out wherever the fuck. And
Right.
you're able to control both simultaneously.
Now, let me ask you this real quick. If you were looking at a frame rate of trying to like pattern archetypal patterns and whatnot, like we were talking about the hive mind a minute ago,
Mhm.
and you were to say, we'll put it through the filter of the runes because rune has been a topic that's been heavy on me lately.
Okay.
And we both work with it. So would you personally say that that would be like working with the rune Perthro or Pjorth as it's sometimes called?
The dice cup?
Yeah.
Okay.
The reason why I ask is because, like, okay, so there was a specific ritual that I did. And one of the reasons why I like Flowers' work so much is he doesn't lead the question. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't lead you to believe any particular type of thing is going to. He doesn't infer things on your own reality. It's a blank slate. It's do this ritual for X amount of times, see what the fuck happens. It might take less time depending on your ability to get into a, you know, altered state of consciousness, or it might take longer, you know, depending on that. And also exterior, external conditions, you know what I mean? There are a lot of people who I've even met who are less apt to go out, you know, on a 3-mile trek, you know, 4-mile trek into the woods and do this kind of stuff.
Right.
I was definitely one of them when I started out until it started disturbing me so much that I had to. But anyway, I did it for about 20 minutes and I stood in the runestata of algaes.
Okay.
And I had an experience with more celestial energies. That's why I asked your experience or opinion with Perthro, is because when I did the algaes working, what they call the actually it's funny because he called it a Grail Cup working, which is interesting to me, because it's known as the elk rune, you know.
Right.
And I'm standing in the stag rune and I felt like I was being stretched, okay? Like I was on a rack. And I actually got the mental image of being pulled on a rack between these two forces. And I could feel my aura, like, you know, expanding, towering above me. And it was weird because it was the point between pain and ecstasy. And I stood there for about like 5 minutes, mouth agape, you know, unable to make words or anything like that, because the sheer overwhelming force of this initiatic transformation and rite was so potent that I didn't feel like I was alive at that point in time, you know, which might have been the purpose. And the
Right.
beings that I saw afterwards were your typical elvish looking whites, you know what I mean? They were very, had sunken in eyes, pointy ears, very, very super white faces. I mean, like pale white, like whiter than the light that's shining through your curtain, kind of looking radiance, you know?
Right.
And so that was pretty much my initiation there. But when I did the actual meditations on the lot cup, it felt like it was more like terrestrial, like I was actually like riding the ley line kind of currents and whatnot, which was different because I didn't even get that when I would channel Bjork, which is, you know, the Mother Birch rune. So I figured I'd ask your experience with that.
So I come by the runes in different ways.
Okay.
What I've experienced with them is that it is, if you could tangibly pull the energy from over here, the energy from over here, and knot them together in a particular way, that would be what the runes represent. They are like the coming together of different energies, the unification of those different energies, like a knot in space-time.
Right.
So when you draw the runes, create the runes, or use them in any particular way, you are channeling quite literally the very fabric of, if your surroundings were a piece of cloth and you were sewing them together, that would be the stitch that sews them together.
Okay, gotcha. So you're coming at it more from the point of unification of this is the form and function. They're one and the same. It's like a coin, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And we toss it up in the air and watch it move through the motion of the framework of the universe and whatnot, and tether the two together.
Yes. Because you, like with the dice cup, you've got the upper V and you've got the lower V, like the two pyramids that are coming together. It's just which side is the stave on? Is it the left side or the right side, or is it in the middle, that allows the unification of the above and the below?
Right. And that's a good point.
And then so it's like if all three-dimensional materia could become as flat as a piece of silk, and then it could be sewn together to make a piece of clothing. That piece of clothing would then be the expression of reality as it goes through, and it serves the function of what it's supposed to do. Like,
gotcha.
It's a functional piece of mechanism. It's kind of like a part of a car engine.
Right. Well, it's like it's like that one story that I explained to you with my friend, right, who needed the job, and we did the rune circle and whatnot. And I said, the only thing I'll ask, I'm not even going to ask for payment, because I just want to see the efficacy of this. We're having an experiment right now. You know, I want to see how much of a load this lifts, you know, as it just let me channel and siphon off your energy, you know, give me the permission, and we'll fucking make this thing giddy up. You know, I put his fucking wallet right on the Fehu rune, and I put a mango on the Yera rune, you know, cycles and whatnot.
Right.
And for like a year and a half, he ended up having a job weeding for people and doing lawn work and maintenance, and it worked out exactly. It took 15 minutes to manifest. That's it. We sat there on a park bench when he got a wrong number, call him, and that was his link, you know. I mean, you're talking about, right? You're talking about practical work. I mean, my God, I've never had another system that I haven't had to put a lot of balls into, except for yours, really, which is great. And I think yours is because it's so, I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's because of the fact that it's pulling directly from a terrestrial link, like you're still here with us. It's not somebody who's in hyperspace already, who's, you know, left behind a tradition,
right?
Or what it is. I don't know what the frick, man, but like your shit's down pat. You're not playing any games, and I like that a lot. Now, what's your? Because I don't think that you do. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen any rituals that you sent me that deal with the making of one's own personal, like, magical alphabet. What's your take on that with the whole Sparian, you know, like individual magical language? Do you promote that idea? Do you poo-poo that idea? What's your take?
I say that every language doesn't matter. The letters channel power.
Yes.
When I speak English, that's a type of power. A represents Aether or Saturn, or B represents whatever the fuck. I've got the list for it. But why do I need to go through the effort of creating my own when I can just use the one that I was taught in school?
True, 100%.
Like that's the question, is like, when I need to make something barbarous, or when I'm speaking in astral or speaking in tongues, as it were, to make just some blam, like just explode. But that's a different, that's stuff that I'm not trying to translate into a terrestrial application. It's like I don't want to have things that go fucked up if someone pronounces the word wrong. Like
Yeah.
there's common speech, and then
Yeah.
there is like what I was trained on. It's this language called Lantis. It's the language of confusion. If you mean something gentle, you have to say it in a strong, hard, scary voice. If you mean something strong, hard, and scary, you have to be calm and gentle and make the letter characters come together in a way that you wouldn't expect, that, you know, like a house is about to drop on your fucking sister, right? Like you've got to, there's that way to do it. And then
Mesmer work almost.
What was that?
Oh, I said mesmer work almost, where you're like doing an inverse, you know, with the words and the meaning and whatnot.
Right. And so I was also taught when I was younger how to do unspoken word magic.
Huh.
Unspoken word magic is the intonation of the root characters of a word or a sentence of words, like a sigil, and you're taking the primary consonant and vowel clusters, and you're creating the shortest spoken word, but in your head and to your spirit, you're intoning the rest of it, saying, if I was going to like Giovanni would be, I call forth the spirit of the earth to come out and be present, right? Before me. You've got, it's a summoning, but it's one word that represents an entire sentence of construct. It's an entire spell in one word, or in one root sound of a word. And when you move your arms in conjunction with this around your body, you can pull those threads together, and then it becomes a gesture, and then it becomes manifest, and you can make it spin and do whatever. So if I start creating my own language, then I have to figure out, what are the root characters going to be? What does the dictionary look like? You know, Enochian magic has its own dictionary. Fucking every language has its own goddamn dictionary. And that just takes time to write. And it's not something that's necessary, because you can use my system in all of those capacities. It's like, it's non-limited. So that's my take on it. It's like, you can do it, but you don't need to.
Yeah. I know what you mean, because it's like, I don't know. I play with the idea just because of the fact that, you know, we get down to matters of practicality, and it's like you were saying, if you have the English language, right, that you speak every single day, you can quite literally just charge a particular intent or phrase. I mean, literally, when I did the last couple of spells that I had, which are, by the way, still trying to manifest, which I probably should do something about that.
Have you had any more problems with that one that I removed from you? Did that stay gone?
It's sticky. It wants to stay on, which is funny as fuck, because I actually live with him now.
Wow.
So yeah. Well, okay, so here's another thing, right? Remember how we talked about it being self-enchantment, right?
Right.
Because when you're casting sigils, obviously, you know, you're doing the chaos magic thing. You know, you're I want to get a car, or it is my will to blah blah blah. Well, that's exactly how I did it. And at the time when I was just screwing with the phraseology, you know, I had somebody pop up over my shoulder, and I thought, oh well, I'll be a fucking, you know, dick moo today and and share a little magic with this person, because they were actually genuinely interested. Like the person wasn't like, you know, scoffing and trying to talk all kinds of shit or whatnot. They were genuinely interested, and they're like, oh, what are you scrolling down? And I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know, I'll give you an idea, you know, off the top of my head. And so I'm using the Sparian method where I'm taking out, the repeating letters and all the bullshit, and I make it into a little caricature, and I just stare at it for like half a second, but I didn't realize how potent I was becoming at, the fire and forget method.
Yes.
And so I put it down, and like maybe a week later is when I first started to see the first like manifestations. Like all he could talk about to me was this thing. And I heard over the years, I wanted to try all of these things, by the way. I tried banishing with laughter. I tried banishing by mentioning the spell, because I'd heard people say, oh, well, you can actually sap the power of the thing if you talk directly to the conduit or about it around a lot of people, because it drains the energy from the construct. Well, that was a load of bullshit.
Yes, it is.
I mean, he acted differently, but it didn't stop it,
Right. Yeah, that's a thing.
They should really tell people.
What? I mean, like, that's the thing. It's you're also using crazy magic now.
Yeah.
So,
It's almost like a weird fetish,
yeah.
Like you become the fetish for your spell, and you walk, and as you walk, if it's your will,
Yeah.
And that's what I put it as. I specifically use the phraseology, it is my will. And I've noticed that it has affected my root, because it's what I'm magnetizing. It's what I'm drawing in.
Right.
And that's the queer thing, is trying to actually find out how to not. I've played around with the idea of stick breaking even, and even with the idea of just straight up doing like a cleanse for fire, because there's a few of those in what do you call it? In the Necronomicon, actually. There's but those are more geared toward witchcraft. It's not, fuck up on your own behalf, a faux pas on your own behalf.
You'll have to do something along the lines of the Nawali state that Castaneda talked about, where you go through and you recapitulate the power and you take power out of the moment. Basically, you have to go and shorten the time frame in the past using magic now that you have in the future. But by doing so, it negates the conversations and the experience that you have, creating a paradox.
Open up a mini wormhole to travel to a point where it no longer actually matters or has any effect over.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you live in the paradox. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it would be to use the essentially it's a recreation of the individual entity. You go through and you strip out its vital parts, and you do an exorcism on all the parts of your spirit, your soul, your body, your mind, etc. But because of what you did, you've nested it inside your subconscious, so you have to be able to travel into your subconscious in order to be able to burn it out.
Right.
So you have to do whatever is going to be the intermediary that's going to get your conscious mind, your spirit, your body, and your subconscious all in alignment, and then go chop down the root.
Fire.
Like, I don't know if it's, I wouldn't even know if you could do drugs and stuff and get that shit gone. Like, you would need to have that external, like, this is that energy. Like, I pulled shit out of you. Like, there was goopy gross. Like, another thing that you could do is you could do it as an invert energy. You could play with the polarity, draw it backwards, and then negate the thing.
Okay, so now how would that work? Because that sounds a little bit easier than opening up a time wormhole paradox. Although maybe I misunderstood and it's not.
I don't know. I always start with what I would do, and then you could go down to like the easier ways. So for me, the time paradox works way easier, because it's like, nope, and done. Like,
I hear you. It was the easier way of doing things that actually kind of fucked me in that, regard and sense of things. not because I was trying to, just get away with doing less, but more because of the fact that I was looking for the most practical method, and that really fucking did work. I mean, so it's like it'll affect the root, but I mean that's about all it affects of my conscious. Is it's affecting my subconscious. It's throwing out the idea. And I mean, I'll notice songs will start playing, right? It's weird because like it forms a telepathic link with us, tethers us. And I'll notice songs that are playing in the back of my head, like that him and I used to listen to when we were young kids, just screwing around way before I discovered magic or anything like that. Way after my psychic shit got shut down as a kid. And all of a sudden, 5 seconds later or whatnot, I'll get the impression that I'm going to hear from him today. And, here he's already messaged me, timestamp probably about 15-20 minutes in all reality after I had that kind of, mental thing.
Fantastic.
Yeah, in some ways.
I mean, so I got a spell around here. It sounds like what you've gone and done. The more you keep talking about it, the more clear this ideation becomes. So let me send it over to you.
Please tell me you at least had a faux pas that was similar.
No.
Or worse.
No. Worse. It's this is a spell I do to people. I don't do it to me.
In other words, you're going to be the guinea pig. Let me know how it works afterwards. And if you're not dead, then
Precisely.
And that's one for the books.
Precisely. And this is the methodology that I used. So there you go. If you want to take your time to go through that. It's the marking of the rite of marking and the rite of unmarking. So what this does is it lets me carve into people's essences specific shapes, symbols, or glyphs, and it bonds to their spirit. This is the method.
Could you do it on the person who you were linked with, hyperlinked with? And do you think if you dissolved it at that end, you would still be pulling from your own root and subconscious experiences? Or do you think that would be enough to like sever the cord and safely disengage the spell?
So the way that this formulation worked, I'll just read it to you. So you take a sample of the blood or some other marker to prove the anchor for the effect. You mix it into the aspects of the body, the 8 aspects of life, whatever. That the gateway is to the blood and as open as you take the individual seal or what have you. Here the spell should be researched and worked out so that no other symbol can be used to mark one, to be the thing. So basically you've created the glyph that you bonded to yourself and to this other person, right?
Right.
From there, you've got the influences of a tether that will allow you to communicate via links such as the mental and emotional bonds, and you'll be able to draw power from the one who you would place the mark upon. Such for use of this process would be ideal in setting up a sect bound by blood that would ensure that there is a level of union between them as they can act and function as a collective, despite whatever distance they might find themselves. Even after the body has died, the power of the spirit can be called upon via that image. So we removed the tether from you. We did not remove the tether from your subject.
This makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so then it becomes a little bit more like surgery because you have to now go in and place this mark.
Yeah. So
severance.
While I got rid of it from you, I didn't get rid of it from the other end. So it's looping because it's still attached to the other motherfucker, not to you.
Gotcha.
Oops.
Hey, I mean, I really didn't express that, to that degree that, we were both kind of hyper. Hey, that's okay. Oh my God, I could literally go through and explain all the weird paradoxes and fucked up shit that's occurred. You're the second necromancer that I've run into in my career. Okay. The first name was Kurt, and he also worked magic from the Necronomicon. I mean, he read a lot of his journal entries to me and whatnot. And this was a local guy, you know what I'm saying? I was the last thing I ever expected. And it was like I may have mentioned before to you, really expressed to me, you know, that it's more than just, you know, dealing with dead things, but it's soul
so much
magic,
more.
isn't it? Oh, yeah. And I was fascinated by it. And by the fact that I find myself doing this shit now, whether or not I want to. So my soul either has an affinity for it and is drawn toward this kind of stuff, or I'm being challenged, which is kind of what it feels like. You know, I've definitely endured a lot of psychic attack after beginning to actually work on this stuff. I can't even begin to tell you, and it's definitely not imagined either, because I was watching a lot of the effects happen on people around me, which got me into crystal magic and whatnot, because it was a little bit more practical as far as application goes. I didn't have to have as many items readily on me. I was able to just stretch that perception and push myself forward and still be working with my energy and with the conduits that I had already put in place via certain spells. It's like I was mentioning to you before, you know, some of those rites that I did before, yours were almost instantaneous, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them were, you know, the one only took like 2 days for me to actually start seeing results, which was the rite of transformation, which sped up some other shit that was happening to me.
Shit.
Yeah. And so it's like, you know, mini bombs going off and whatnot. And I don't think I would have handled it as well if I hadn't have undergone all the other shit that was happening to me over the years. But for practicality purposes, like we were talking about, your system, the Norse runes, those are the only things that I mean, when I was doing the sigil craft, okay, which was my only real jaunt into the world of chaos magic, I didn't get huge into glitter bombing and all that kind of stuff. I did use the LS to amplify, and motherfuck does that work.
Yes.
Unfortunately, much to my chagrin, because of, well, one of those faux pas that I was telling you about. But I mean, dude, I was fucking carving it into the air, and other people were feeling it. You know what I mean? I had cats going, "Why is there a spider web in here? What the fuck?" And I'm like, this is madness, you know?
That's fantastic.
Right? And these are fuckers who have no clue what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? I'm essentially playing Mad Doctor over here. You know, close your eyes and just, you know, get into a deep space, and they're saying this shit back to me. Why'd the room get so much fucking colder and shit? I'm like, oh fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it worked, but it wasn't, there's still components and elements that are off, you know. Your system is in sync with itself, it feels like. I don't know if that's a very descriptive way of putting that, if it's very sophisticated, but it's as eloquent as I can get right now. And I really would be interested to see what's gonna happen when another thing.
Yeah.
Have you ever done a toad bone rite?
Say that again.
Have you ever done a toad bone rite?
Technically, yeah, I used a frog skeleton, the whole thing, but I didn't boil the thing to get the toad bone out of it.
Okay. I was curious because I actually have a couple on the side of my house, which I'm letting kind of bake out and do their thing. And I know Mark Allen Smith has a quite detailed one where he talks about, you know, carving the sigil or painting the sigil onto the frog skin and wearing the toad bone and whatnot. And I want to say it's in Queen of Hell.
That makes
But
sense. I'd have to go check the Queen of Hell in order like to verify. I've got a copy of it if you don't like.
I know you saw, you showed me. I'm very, very jealous.
Dude, those fuckers are expensive. But
Uh-huh.
but again, I don't really know how I feel about Mark Allen Smith's commentary where it's those entities are Atlantean deity. They
Yeah.
got that are on this side of this epoch, and they were the remnants of another world creation. Like that seems like it's a broken mythos. Like it seems like it's fucking loony.
I mean, I it's so weird with unconfirmed gnosis because I feel like, I don't know. You mentioned you haven't really gone deep into the whole like drug scene with doing that and then doing the rites. You pretty much just raw dog the shit, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't need the drugs to go. I don't want the drugs to do that.
Yeah.
Like this stuff is like riding a goddamn wild bull. Like
Uh-huh.
I don't need drugs to make it worse.
I hear you. I had only done it when I was starting out because I had that little faith in my technique, you know?
Yeah.
And that's because I hadn't been working the system for a super long time. And when I would do it, when I would perform it, I would feel results, but it always felt like I said, there was something off, like there wasn't something that was syncing up or connecting or whatnot. And that was preventing from deepening or widening of the experience. And I felt cheated. So I would do things like take DMT and scry the Magus tarot card and astrally project through the goddamn thing, you know.
Right.
The border would open up like an inch or so, and I would see a sigil at the bottom, the very bottom. And I'm using the Thoth deck, by the way. And I'm just over here like, whoa, you know, I'm shooting through the damn thing. I'm seeing the 3 primes and whatnot, and red, yellow, and blue. And they're like swirling above my body. And I actually ended up getting, I think I told you this story. I don't remember if I did or not. I actually ended up getting lifted off my fucking couch. Okay. Talking about levitated, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm having this whole dialogue. And it's like, well, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I don't fucking know. I've always wanted to be a musician. Like, why you got to ask me that? You know, like I was being a dick, you know, because I'm like, if you're powerful or potent, you know, whatever entity I'm talking with, I want to goddamn know it, you know, like
Right.
respect is earned in earth, you know, like I was being a shithead. And I remember it kind of like swirled around like such in this very weird, like almost like fractal pattern. And I got hoisted up off of the couch, flipped over, and it knocked the wind out of me. And then I realized I fucked up because I'm like, okay, whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm actually communicating with is not just inside of my own head. It's not just me having some kind of weird advanced psychosis. It's a real fucking force, and I don't know what the fuck it wants from me, but we're gonna figure it the fuck out, I guess.
Right.
And I mean, I walked around like that. It broke the drug. Like the drug's only supposed to last 15 minutes in your system at max.
Yeah.
Okay. I do all my research pharmacologically. I try to be as sound as I can and as shamanically close to being accurate as they would have practiced. This is not how this worked. After doing the magic ritual, it lasted probably about 2.5 hours. I'm walking around at 3 o'clock in the goddamn morning around my hometown, stoned out of my goddamn mind, able to see the curvature of the wind. Okay. I'm freaking the fuck out. I'm like, I need to go home. I need to lay down. This is bullshit. What the fuck?
Oh, Jesus.
So yeah, I can understand why you would say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had so many weird thoughts, you know, like I've tiny bit of pie, and then I'm sitting there meditating on a quartz, and all of a sudden I'll get a random thought that'll hit my head that's like, oh, by the way, the person you call Jesus or Yeshua, the way that you're perceiving life now is if you're looking at life through like multiple facets out of a diamond. This is the type of level he was on when he was doing all those miracles and shit. And I'm like, okay, we'll go with that. We'll say you're not bullshitting me, random thought. you know,
Yeah.
what's good with it, you know, like, I made a gesture with a mudra, right?
Right.
And I heard wait in my head, right? 3 seconds later, there's a sound that sounds like a fucking breaker backfiring off in the distance. And the person I was with, who was not a magician, who was just some rando that I met at a local men's shelter.
Okay.
Okay. He looks over and he looked at my hands, and then he looked back out there and he was like, keep in mind, this kid's stoned as fuck too. So his eyes are all beat red and he's like looking at me and freaking out, and he's trying to run, but he can't find his feet. It's the most goddamn hilarious thing. And it's like I'm trying to piece together little bits and pieces of why my soul specifically was showing me these different forms of magic, because I, interestingly enough, recently read somewhere somebody did a dissertation on the HGA, and they said
Okay.
it's not what a lot of people make it out to be. It's really more like spiritual puberty. You know, it's like it's more of a hallmark than it is an actual being. And that's pretty much what I experienced. That was more accurate than I've given credence to over the years. One of the reasons why I got out of the GD type magic and whatnot is,
Okay.
I don't know.
The HGA is like your future self when it comes to power and magic.
Yeah, like
The
time
spell-
traveling.
Yeah, but see, the thing again is the rite of transformation is it takes that and takes it inside of you and it gives you your full potential. Like you become your HGA.
See, that's what this is the part where you have to forgive me. I went outside. I didn't want to wake everybody up because I knew I was going to be kind of like, you know, excitable and whatnot. And people are still like sleeping and getting ready for work. So that's the point that I feel you just hit on the point. I think you hit the needle in the haystack. It's not synced up because it's just opening or beginning that process. But how do you transfer that thing and make it overlap to where the thing is intertwined with you? You know what I mean? Where it grounds itself out. If that kind of chaotic random energy is just in you and just doing all types of things, that can't be fucking smart as a practicing magician, to where you just awake those centers. Well, what the fuck do you do with it? You know, how do you ground it out? How do you make it cohesive, you know, to where you're aligning all those parts of the subtle body and the physical body, to where when you move, everything in you dimensionally moves outward and you're able to stretch kind of, you know, astrally and move your arms and legs and become autonomous within the thing, rather than just, you know, disjointed, discombobulated and going, well, I don't know what the fuck's going, you know. Does that make sense?
So are you asking how to operate as this thing, or are you asking how I've been able to do it for so many years?
Well, I would more or less say, I mean, it's kind of a blend of those, but I'm more or less like asking why there are types of information out there that don't get to that level, you know, because that's almost what it feels like happened to Crowley. Like it feels like he did that shit when he was early on in his life, and he didn't really like ground it out. He kind of just like hit this weird mile marker and it made him act fucking strange, you know? And then he hit another point where that like opened and blossomed, and he took on a completely different thing. He got a fucking printing press. He got all of these things. He orchestrated events in the world that moved us into another modern renaissance, no matter how brief, you know. You can argue it, but he did have an effect and weight upon the world, and from the angle of his HGA, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, what is that then, that missing element in between the two? Like,
so the body before the rite of transformation, the body has the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. It has the spirit and the body is separate. The rite of transformation bonds all of those things to your body. It compresses. So you have the ability to embody your higher self The maturation period, 7 years, 14 years, 20 years, 21 years, those are all mile markers that you'll go through in different incarnations for the different types of magicians. So for example,
Right.
like there's the Magus card in the Thoth deck that's got, one of them is a sexual magician. So you go through your sex. One of them is high magic and ceremonial magic, like what you've been through. The other is the ascendancy of you and Yeshua's Christ and Muhammad and Zoroaster and all of Solomon and all that. They're
Right.
all working in unison with the collective. They are the embodiment of themselves the best way that they can be without, they become their own singularity within the collective. They are so much themselves that they could be no other thing but themselves. So they express themselves as fully as they can, and they understand that the more that they serve the community, the more that they do outward actions, the more becoming that they are as whole. So it's a greater conduit. The more they share, the more it opens up. The more they become responsible for, the more it opens up. It's like, that's why exactly. It's like, that's why when COVID hit, I started reaching out directly to the Christian leadership in the entrepreneurial space. People like Tony Robbins, Russell Brunson, Pedro Deo, Pete Vargas, Jason Fladlin, and a bunch of others that really are some of the best marketers, the best business people in the planet, and teaching them methods of apprenticeship so that they can enroll and create new economies and created $1 billion industry in about a year. So it's similar. Like, how do you save business when the world is collapsing? You teach people that have the means and the resources to dig deep how to do it.
Sure.
So that it can be done. So that way I was able to go through the process and heal and fix all the damage and stuff so that I wasn't a fucking monster. Because a couple of years ago, I would have been like, let's just fucking watch the world burn and I'm not going to teach and do shit. But connecting to the hive, connecting to the greater forces, connecting to those things which I am not, right, allows me to use the things that I am not connected to in a different kind of way. So it allows me to have that connection. So it's a maturation period. So you get your magic, all of the things that you can do when you're dead as a spirit, you get all of that alive.
Yeah.
And so that's what
let me ask you this too. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying that's what the entire rite of transformation is for. Is like when I was, I smoked a yew needle, and if you know what the yew tree does, it'll cause a heart attack. But it gets you really close to the death planes. And so when I was doing that, I heard the entire evocation, or the invocation in this case, being spoken by the spirits, and I was writing it down like a fucking madman. Like 7 or 8 pages. Each page was a different version of the spell to connect to the different versions of yourself that could be. So
shamanic rites of passage, bring yourself as close to death as you can, and steal a little bit of fire from the gods and bring it back.
Correct. Black fire.
Yep. Never gets fucking easier.
No, it doesn't.
Now, do you think that the body can only handle so much of that each time that because it's like you mentioned, as you go through that maturation process, those rites of individuation and initiation deepen, and then you're able to bring back even more each time to the collective as you're doing that? Do you think that you get to a point to where you can no longer do that without actually physically crossing over? Or,
well, I mean, that's the whole point, isn't it? Is to be able to transubstantiate.
Yeah. I mean, just step across the fucking abyss without even having to. I mean, they say that there were a couple of Jewish mystics and sages who did it. That's the mythos anyway.
Right.
They never died. They kind of just poof.
Yep.
Yikes.
That's the goal. You want to ascend, you quite literally ascend.
Yeah. Uh,
It's
I
ascension
mean,
magic.
think about how great your space-time mechanics have to be in order to do that without any kind of fuck ups.
My space-time mechanic math is pretty solid.
Yeah.
Like, I love space math. Space math is what I call it. But I mean, and that's the great unifier, is if you can demonstrate that becomes viable and possible.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Revolutionary.
right. It carries on the tradition of what Crowley started. We get to finish, or we get to take to the next. We with this system, we get to stand on his shoulders, and then whoever else gets to stand on mine, and then whoever else gets to stand on theirs.
Sure.
And so it creates this upward flow of power.
Yeah. Constantly spiraling.
That's it. You know, it's like one of my longest students, Guy, he did the rite of transformation a couple of weeks ago, and it took him about 2 weeks to go through all of it. So whereas you had a couple of days experience, his was 2 weeks, and it anchored on the full moon. Like, wow, it ties you into the natural rhythms, and it sets you up to be a conduit for creation. Like, you become a fixed node in creation. So as you work on these things, you have the means by which you can puppet master or whatever your local energies or the whole of creation, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have to work in tandem with the other things that have the capacity to do the same shit. So you have to work with things like Shiva. You have to work with things like Brahma. You have to work with things like the lamas and the popes and the Christ and all that crap. Like,
right.
All those people that came before, you have to work like they did. They can't do shit about what you set in place, but you have to think like that in order to be able to comprehend the depth of what becomes possible.
Right.
So
right.
when you were talking about like you doing the thing like Christ, that's exactly correct. It's like, that is what he was doing. This is the magic, like what was being done.
Yeah.
It's just the mechanics and the belief system behind it. It's a system of power, it doesn't require belief. It doesn't require you to believe in it for it to have affected you.
Right. Which is why I like the whole Peter Carroll, Phil Hine type, technique process is more really, like, well, we're doing these things as a set of techniques. There's underlying principles which govern them, because there have to be, because it's tied into this base of reality plus the dimensions that are surrounding it. And in order to manipulate those things, in order to cause great change, you have to have some kind of anchor, you know what I mean? Because it's like you said, the thing becomes so large that it engulfs. And if you don't have some kind of foothold to work around those things, then you're kind of getting swept away in the ocean, I mean, you can ride the tide, you can ride the current, but as you can see from me, your weird little experimentations end up maybe going awry because you're learning this type of magic or that type of technique or whatever. And you're trying to blend and find some kind of cohesion with that, like within the rite of transformation, which kind of does that. It takes away from the inert obfuscation that is around like an immature practice of just like, oh, I'm just going to experiment with this my whole life, which experimentation is necessary, obviously, but
right.
Eventually it's like you said, you want to tap the collective and bring that out in front of you. And that seems to be the missing element in a lot of systems, is that you have that unifying principle. It's not hidden, it's right there, it says it's the rite of transformation. It's not hidden in the guise of colorful language or rhetoric or having to master these 30 or 40 different, you know, types of philosophy before you even approach the thing and come to realize what the fuck is actually being concerned, you know. Modern plain text, this is what it is. Do the thing and witness the results, you know.
Exactly. I mean, but then again, it goes back to why I use these fuckers. These are anchors.
Oh, okay.
So
sorry, I can't see my screen.
Okay.
My screen start because I have to like charge my phone. So go ahead and explain.
So this is all the planetary associations in their corresponding ink with the astrological forces. The astrological forces have their animal, their metal, their mineral, and their herbal components inside of these jars, along with the sigils for each of the planets that the sign moves through as its principal ruler, going from that sign back down here to Earth. So
much simpler.
It allows through those conduits, they're quite literally physical conduits. So what I do awakens those, and I can create, recreate, and do all that shit. That's why I have all those jars in my spell work, is because it's pulling on the collective externally. So all of the stuff that I get to do, it's just connecting in an outside space. So I'm not having to mentally sit there and weave that shit together like without them. It's in front of me. I'm working the spell. I'm animating the totem. Everything becomes external process.
Right.
So with that, it makes it easier for manifestation and such.
Infinitely.
Correct.
Infinitely.
Correct.
I really wish I wouldn't have had to come across that information at such a late juncture, because yeah, that would have been a lot easier to just line everything up. And you know, it's weird because I feel like in a lot of ways, like it was mentioned haphazardly in a lot of the ceremonial texts, but in a lot of the traditional Anglo-Saxon Wicca, I almost feel like they touch a little bit more on combining them. But it's like you were talking about too, there are different stages, you know, of maturity to reach it. It's like, why do you want to do the thing in the first place? You should be able to figure that out. You know, this is like big mover shaker type shit. You know, it's not, it's big medicine. It's not going to be the easiest thing to navigate if you don't understand the basic theory. But at the same place, and same time, you know, if you train the person up well enough how to do it, you know, and the ideology behind it, and then they get to experience it firsthand, then they are getting to understand the change, as opposed to you know, not, you know, experimenting with it for so long. As like with me, I did that with the runes. You know, I invoked them for a long time for path working before I ever actually used them.
Right.
But then when I did my first spell with them, I found out that they were more than potent enough. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah,
it was a system that took all of that extra work out, because all I had to do was, you know, chant, fixate on what the outcome was to be after selecting the runes that were necessary, realizing that there were certain, you know, points where they met up and where they didn't. So understanding the rune script enough to understand how those things may and may not work, and then trying to come at it from a practical stance as well to see, you know, like the longevity, how the effect amplified over time and affected other people. I did one for a friend of mine who was an author, you know. She really was trying to write and needed inspiration, and I didn't really specify how I wanted that to come across, which wasn't very smart. But I did add in a rune of balance. Okay. And I added it in several times, a symbolic number, actually, amount of times to the script. And I saw that it didn't really affect negatively, but it did cause an inconvenience. Okay. There was a trade, there was a give and there was a take. I mean, she ended up out of her fucking medication for a while, and that really spurned some creative ideas. It caused a bit of chaos, but I set a parameter for it in a certain amount of time. And once that finished, she was good. She had written like 20 pieces, you know what I'm saying? None the wiser to the fact that this had been done, you know?
Right.
So that secrecy added potency, I feel, almost as well, because there was no outside contortious interference to the energy. There was no resistance at all. And it helped me to see how quick and effective the thing took place. And also helped to see, you know, you really got to make sure you get your shit down. If I would have had one of those anchors or nodes, would have been 10 times easier.
Yeah.
You know, here, just put this by your bedside for a few nights. Also, I hate to say this, my phone is dying. I have to go charge it. Are you going to be available a little bit further on throughout the day, like say maybe in a couple hours? Or
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I definitely want to continue this conversation. I was kind of on low battery when we started anyway.
No worries. Yeah, go do your thing.
Okay.
Let's chat in a little bit.
Cool. I'll go charge up and I'll message you.
Awesome, man. Have a good one.
Thank you, Brian. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Likewise.